Welcome. In this video, we're going to take a short loop and make it much longer without it getting boring. As usual, I'm using Ableton, but I think the concepts from this video especially can be applied in any software and across many different musical contexts. So let's start by listening to our example loop that we're going to build out. So we have three layers. We have this organ sound, we have this bass sound, and then we have a kick and a snare. All right, so first thing we can do is double it and then make some changes. So I'm gonna select these three layers, copy, paste. I'm going to pull out my loop points, and then I'm going to consolidate each of these pairs of clips, which means that we're going to take two separate clips and turn them into one longer clip. So on Ableton, it's Command J, and we have to do that with each of these pairs. Okay, so right now this is going to sound exactly like what we just listened to, but now we'll go in and make some changes. So the first thing I want to do is just change some chords. So right now, the last two chords kind of feel like a turnaround, right? It sort of gets us back to the beginning, but they're kind of unusual chords. So I think it would be better if we didn't hear these chords as frequently. So in the first loop, I'm going to get rid of both of those, and then I'm just going to fill that in with something else. So for the sake of keeping it simple, let's just take this chord and put it here again. So I'm gonna copy that, then I'll undo so that those are back where they're supposed to be and paste it here. Let's see how this sounds. Nice. So I like that because the more unusual chords happen less frequently. There's one thing is we need to change the bass line because we have this passing tone here that only fits with the kind of weird chords, but it's not going to work as well with the chord that we added. So I'm just using the last note and just stretching it out, getting rid of the passing tone. So let's listen now. Another thing I want to do is just change the voicing of a couple of these chords, which can be a really easy way to create some variation. So I don't know, let's just take these three notes and pop them up an octave. See how this sounds. Cool. So what I like about this is that we kind of have this up and down contour. So rather than having sort of every 4 bars, it starts low and goes high, now it starts low, goes high, and then goes back down. So we just sort of have a slightly longer arc that we're working with. Next thing we're going to do is open up the drum track and just mute some sounds. And I kind of want to just do this trial and error, not put too much thought into it. Just add a little variation into the beat. Let's just try muting 3 notes in, oh, whatever. Let's not even put a system to it. Let's just go through and mute a handful of notes. We'll go that one. We'll go these two. We'll do this one. And we'll do that one, that one. Let's hear it. Very cool. I like that. I'm just going to leave it at that. So, you know, the overall pattern, it feels consistent, but because we mute different notes in each repetition of that pattern, it just feels like a drummer is improvising rather than somebody copy pasting a loop. Okay, next thing, let's try adding some fills. So we can do fills really in any part of this layer, but I want to go back into the harmony, the chord progression, and maybe we can think of something interesting to do in here. I think I want to do something in here. We can do a little melodic fill. So let's see what this will sound like. Okay, I like that. Let's make it more... Let's try this. I like that. Let's do the same thing in one of these inner voices. And then maybe the bass voice too. Cool. I like all that. I want them to be a little softer. Cool. Let's add a drum fill now. So it kind of works well, I think, to add fills at the end of sections, right? Not necessarily like a whole section, but you know, we'll think of sort of a group of 4 bars as a section, and it works well to add a fill at the end of a group of 4 bars. So we did this little melodic fill at the end of the first group of 4 bars. Let's add a little drum fill at the end of the second group of 4 bars. So we'll go in. Nice. I like to play with the velocity when we get like this. So let's just take these, we'll go all the way down, and then let's make these build in velocity. All right, I like this. Next thing we're going to do is double it again. So we'll take this group of 8 bars, copy, paste, pull out the loop points, and then what we can do is sort of mute on a slightly larger scale. So rather than going through note by note, we'll delete little sections of the clips. So, you know, for example, let's have this melodic fill. Let's delete this melodic fill the first time. Will only happen the second time. Let's also, right here, where it is repeating again, we'll chop it out like that, and then maybe we can leave this kick, but we'll get rid of that other one. I like the way that works. The only thing is we missed that re-entrance. So the way we can do that is we can copy the beginning of that sound and paste it here and then delete it. Nice. I like when everything kind of re-enters with the snare. That's nice. What else can we do? Maybe let's get rid of some bass. Actually, let's have the bass not come back in until... Well, let's see how that sounds. Okay, we'll listen through the whole thing. Excellent. Okay, so I like this as a starting point. You know, I think we could continue to work through and trim it out until it's you know, a little more interesting. But next thing I want to do then is take the whole thing again. So we'll select all this, copy, paste, change our loop points, and then I want to think of this as maybe like the introduction of a song or something like that. So let's gradually introduce the layers. So we'll bring them in one at a time. And the way I'm going to think of this as, you know, I'm going to introduce a layer each time I feel like it's starting to get a little bit boring. So let's say we want to start with just the organ. So I'll mute this and I'll mute this. It might be nice to bring something in there. Let's bring in the drums there. Yeah, I like that. So we'll bring in the drums at that pause. The way that works. I like that the bass doesn't come in at what feels like the beginning of a section. It kind of enters in the middle, just sort of a nice surprise. And then, yeah, okay, let's listen one more time. So to me, I feel like it needs a change here. I'm not totally sure what that's going to be, but I'll delete it. And I feel like that's a pretty good start here. So what we did is we took a single 4-bar loop. It was like 8 seconds, and we've stretched it out to be almost a minute. And it has this sort of nice, it has a nice amount of variation in it. It has this sort of nice build up by adding in the layers. And I think what we can do now is maybe make a contrasting section. So yeah, let's try that. So to make a contrasting section, we could just start from scratch, but you know, something I like to do is to take what we already have and just make enough changes so that it feels like a contrasting section. So I'm going to take 4 of these bars and copy them over here. So this is not quite our original loop, but it's not too far off. Let's start by changing the chord progression again. So So actually, I just want to get rid of all this. Yeah, I want this section to be simpler. So I'm gonna now, let's have this chord come in on the third beat. And then let's repeat this chord. Yeah, I like that as the contrasting section. I'll consolidate these again, so that's Command J. Let's see if there's something we can do different with the bass line. Actually, let's come back to the bass line. Let's go to the beat. I want this to be a lot simpler too. Get rid of that fill. So what I did is I kind of just took the kicks from the first half of the measure and I left them, and I sort of muted all the kicks in the second half of the measure. Not totally systematically, but that's kind of what I did. Let's also mute the first and the third snare. Cool, I like that. Okay, so what we've done is we've made a much simpler chord progression. We've thinned out the beat. It's a way simpler beat. Now let's think about just sort of the spectrum, right? We've got our lows, our mids, and our highs. The first section really doesn't have a lot of high frequencies. So that could be a nice extra layer to add into this contrasting section to really make it much different, right? We'll add something that has a lot of crispness, right? Like some hi-hats or something like that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a drum rack, separate track. And then I'm gonna go into my samples folder, and what do we have? Silverware. I have this fun little folder of silverware samples, and I'm gonna drag them into the drum rack. Let's see what these sound like. These are fun. I think I want them to be like higher though, so I'm gonna go through and transpose these all up a bit. Well, you know what? I'll do that as we're listening. Let's make a pattern with these. Okay, I like that enough. What else can we do? Well, we'll leave that for now. So, you know, the big difference now, we've got the simpler chord progression, the simpler beat. We've got an added layer of high frequency, which we didn't have in the previous section. Let's also get rid of some of the low end that the previous section has. So easy way to do this is let's go into the bass, let's select it all, and we'll shift it up 1 octave. Okay, great. So overall now we have kind of similar musical material, but a much different texture. So let's do what we did last time and copy the whole thing, paste it. So we'll double the length and then make some changes. Last thing, you know, I should have done this before. Last thing I want to do is add one more track. And it's going to be a pitched instrument track. I'm going to add this piano that I have. Iowa, there it is. It's called Iowa Piano. Really nice free VST. Very imperfect but natural sounding piano. I'm going to drag it up beneath the organ, and then I'll just try doubling the organ with that piano sound. Let's bring it down an octave. I like that. Let's mute the organ for those first chords. Also gonna turn down the level of the bass sound. I'll do it here too. Okay. We're muting some stuff, changing the arrangement like we've been doing. We'll add that bass note back in. What can we do? Let's mute this piano note. Yeah, I don't know. Let's try it. Okay, now let's double it one more time, and let's think of this as sort of the whole length of the second section, and let's give it some direction. So the first section started very thin and built up. This section, let's actually start full on, start with everything in, and we'll gradually wear it down to maybe just the beat and the piano or something like that. So let's see. Yeah, let's mute the we'll mute the organ for that last section. Let's mute the bass for the last section too, and maybe we can mute a couple of random measures in there just to give it some variety. I don't know, let's try that. Okay, we'll listen to it now. Okay, I'm happy enough with that. You know, I think I would probably normally spend a little more time carving it out and making sure it flows really nicely. But let's now check out our whole track so far. So we've got section 1 is here. Section 2 is when this purple stuff enters and the piano enters. From the beginning, throughout section 1 we build up, and throughout section 2 we sort of build down. So let's say after section 2 we want to repeat it from measure 9. So the beginning is sort of like an introduction. In which case, you know, again, we started with an 8-second loop, and now we've built it out to almost a minute and a half of music. Let's listen to it. first section. Cool. I'm pretty happy with that. You know, again, it's got some quirks in there that I definitely would iron out with more time, but I think you get the general idea of this strategy. To summarize, here are some concepts that you could use on your own loops. The routine is double it, make changes, and repeat. A couple ideas for changes that worked here are to change individual chords, to change chord voicings, to try muting notes, to try muting whole phrases or clips, and to add fills. Once you have something longer to play with, think about giving it some shape. Simple ideas are to do a build-up by gradually introducing layers, or to do a breakdown by gradually removing layers. If this type of shape isn't enough for the full piece, you could try creating a contrasting section. You could always write something new, but you could also just create a variation of the original section. What we did earlier was to create a simple stripped down version of the original. In the contrasting section, focus on texture. You could think about instrumentation. So in this case, in the contrasting section, we added a piano to double the organ sound. You should also think about rhythmic density. If the original section was sparse, make the new section dense. Lastly, I think you should focus on the spectral extremes, the high end and the low end. In our case, the first loop had a lot of bass, but no high end. So our contrasting section had much less bass because we popped the bass up an octave, and it had a new high end percussion layer. Our goal in this video wasn't to establish a set of rules that will always work. Every piece of music and every genre works differently, and that just wouldn't be any fun. But I think some of the concepts that worked in this example can work as kicking off points for coming up with your own tricks for turning a loop into a full piece. Thanks for watching, and good luck.